A man risked his life to save a lion from a painful death, but he could never have imagined that a real nightmare was waiting for him ahead. In the vast savannas of Serengeti National Park in Tanzania, the morning sun was breaking through the mist, painting the tall grasses with golden light. The air was filled with the sharp scent of acacia trees and damp earth after the night's rain. Moving slowly through this natural symphony of sounds and smells was an old, battered off-road vehicle, leaving a trail of reddish dust behind. Marcus, a young wildlife ranger, was starting his daily patrol with binoculars around his neck and determination in his eyes. His weathered face bore scars from past encounters with poachers, and his gaze showed a man who had seen more than he should in his 28 years. Growing up in a small village on the park's border, Marcus had watched poachers ruthlessly kill animals for profit since childhood. When he was 12, he lost his father, one of the park's first rangers. Poachers shot him during a nighttime raid. That day, the boy swore to continue his father's work, even though his mother begged him to choose a safer life. His mother's words still echoed in his ears. "This land took your father, Marcus. Does it have to take you too?" But he couldn't turn away. Wild nature ran through his veins like blood. Every time he set out, Marcus carefully checked his gear, making sure he had enough water, medicine, and equipment for any emergency. His partner, an older ranger named Tuma, often laughed at this habit, but after several situations where Marcus's preparation saved their lives, he stopped commenting. On his route, Marcus often paused to listen to the pulse of the savanna, the chirping of finches, the distant grunts of hippos near the watering hole, the rustling of tall grass in the light breeze. Kneeling, he studied fresh tracks, reading the story of the night as if it were a book. These skills made him one of the best trackers in the Serengeti. That morning, when the air was especially fresh after the storm, Marcus spotted a troubling sign: dark red drops on the yellow grass, too bright and fresh to be normal vegetation. His pulse quickened, and his hand instinctively reached for his radio, but an almost tangible feeling stopped him midway. Any backup would arrive too late, and the wounded animal needed help right now. Turning off the engine, he silently got out of the vehicle, making sure his tranquilizer was ready, just in case. With every careful step along the blood trail, the tension inside him grew. His sharpened hearing picked up the smallest sounds. A branch snapping underfoot could signal a poacher's trap. A growl could warn of an injured predator. He heard neither, and that made him even more uneasy. Rounding a dense acacia bush, Marcus froze in disbelief. A massive male lion lay before him. Its majestic dark mane was matted with dried blood, and its body was tangled in steel wire, the kind poachers use to set deadly traps. The wire had cut deep into the lion's flesh, leaving raw, bleeding wounds. A snare meant for an antelope or zebra had caught a much bigger victim. The lion lifted its head, and its amber eyes met Marcus's. But instead of the rage and aggression he expected, Marcus saw nothing but exhaustion and pain. A low growl, more like a weak moan, broke the silence. It was clear. The lion had been trapped for hours, growing weaker with every failed attempt to break free. Marcus slowly removed his backpack, never breaking eye contact with the lion. The slightest mistake could cost him his life, but leaving the animal to die was not an option. His instincts screamed of danger. A wounded predator was unpredictable, especially when cornered. Yet something deep inside told him. This lion understood that the man was not a threat. "Hang in there, buddy," the man whispered as he pulled a pair of wire cutters from his toolkit. "I'm here to help. Just don't do anything reckless, and we'll both make it out of this alive." Inch by inch, Marcus worked to free the lion from the deadly trap. The wire resisted, now digging into his own fingers deep enough to draw blood, but he didn't stop. Sweat dripped into his eyes, mixing with dust, as time stretched into eternity. Every time he reached for another loop of wire, he braced himself for an attack. Adrenaline surged through his veins, making every nerve stand on edge. The lion seemed to understand what was happening. He flinched from the pain whenever the wire tore away from his wounds, but he didn't try to fight back. His eyes remained locked on the man's hands, watching every movement with cautious attention. When the last loop of wire fell to the ground, Marcus exhaled quietly. Carefully, he reached into his backpack for antiseptic and began treating the deepest wounds. The lion shuddered at the sting, but made no attempt to attack. His breathing was still heavy, but there was something new in his gaze. Something between relief and gratitude? Marcus pushed the thought away as absurd. And yet, in that moment, something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. "I'll call you Zola," Marcus said, recalling a word from the local language that meant dawn. "Because you'll see many more sunrises, my friend." Marcus slowly stepped back, giving Zola space and the chance to decide his own fate. To his surprise, the lion rose on shaky legs, took a few uncertain steps, then stopped and turned around. That long look over his shoulder was burned into Marcus's memory forever, as if the predator wanted to remember the face of his rescuer. Then, the majestic animal, still limping, disappeared into the tall grass. Back at the base, Marcus told his colleagues what had happened, but he was met with doubtful looks and laughter. "A lion wouldn't just lie there while you cut him free," they told him. "He would have torn you to pieces." Only Tuma remained silent, watching Marcus with a thoughtful expression. Weeks turned into months. Life returned to its usual routine of patrols, tracking poachers and helping injured animals. But Marcus often found himself scanning the grasslands, searching for a golden shadow. And one day he actually saw it, a silhouette of a lion with a dark mane, following his off-road vehicle from a respectful distance. At first he thought it was his imagination, but then it started happening regularly. At first, Marcus's colleagues didn't believe his stories about a lion that seemed to watch over him, but soon they witnessed the strange phenomenon for themselves. The lion never approached people but was often seen on the horizon when Marcus was working alone. "You're crazy," the station chief, a veteran ranger with 30 years of experience, told him. "That's a wild animal, not a house cat. He's just waiting for the right moment. Keep your rifle close." But Marcus saw what others didn't, how Zola stayed at the edge of visibility, never coming too close, yet never fully disappearing either. One day, while stopping by a watering hole, Marcus watched in amazement as the lion chased off a group of hyenas from his vehicle before retreating back into the acacia trees. Another time, while tracking poachers, Zola suddenly stepped onto the road, growling, forcing Marcus to turn back. That evening, Marcus learned that poachers had set up a deadly ambush exactly where he had been headed. Rumors of the strange friendship spread among the park staff and later among the local villagers. Some believed it was a blessing from the ancestors, while others dismissed it as coincidence. But even the skeptics couldn't deny the facts. Wherever Marcus went, the golden shadow followed him, a silent guardian. The dry season brought new challenges. The relentless heat dried up water sources, making animals nervous and unpredictable. Territorial conflicts between prides grew more intense, and poachers became more active, taking advantage of the fact that animals were gathering around the few remaining water sources. During this difficult time, in the western part of the park, a herd of enraged elephants, driven mad by thirst and chased by poachers, became a serious threat to the tourist camps. Several tents had already been destroyed by the massive animals, and although no human casualties had occurred, the situation was becoming more dangerous by the day. Receiving a distress call over the radio, Marcus immediately rushed to help a group of photographers from the National Geographic Society who had found themselves in the path of the stampeding herd. The wheels of their off-road vehicle spun helplessly in the loose sand of a dried-up riverbed, while the enraged elephants advanced with every passing second. Coordinating the evacuation over the radio with other rangers, Marcus tried to buy time. He flashed his headlights and honked his horn, hoping to draw the elephants' attention to himself and give the photographers a chance to escape. The maneuver worked, but at a cost. Marcus himself was now cut off from the main group of rangers. Trying to escape the pursuit, he drove his vehicle into a narrow canyon, hoping it would be too tight for the massive elephants to follow. But he miscalculated. The Jeep got wedged between two boulders and the engine stalled. The ground trembled beneath him. The furious elephant leader, a massive bull with a broken tusk, was leading the herd straight toward him. The air filled with the scent of dust and raw animal fear. A wave of panic washed over Marcus as he realized there was nowhere to run. A dead end lay ahead, and behind him, the enraged elephants closed in. He grabbed his flare gun, knowing it would only delay the inevitable. The massive gray figure of the leader appeared in the canyon's entrance, filling the entire space. The elephant raised its trunk and let out a deafening trumpet call that made the canyon walls shake. And then, out of nowhere, a golden blur shot into view. Zola appeared like a ghost, leaping onto a rock ledge above the elephant before landing between Marcus and the giant. His roar, full of fury and defiance, sliced through the air like thunder. Marcus had never seen anything like it. A lone lion facing off against a creature that outweighed him by dozens of times. Instead of attacking directly, which would have been suicide, Zola began to maneuver, drawing the elephant's attention away from Marcus. He dodged the swinging trunk with lightning-fast reflexes, growling and lunging just enough to keep the massive beast focused on him. It was a deadly game, but the lion played it with incredible skill. Marcus used the distraction to scramble out of the jeep and climb up the rocky ledge. Stones crumbled beneath his feet, their sharp edges cutting into his palms, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. Glancing back, he saw the rest of the elephants entering the canyon, while Zola continued his desperate dance with the leader. Then, at one fateful moment, the elephant's trunk finally struck the lion, sending him tumbling several yards. Zola crashed against the rocks and fell, but almost instantly he was back on his feet, as if refusing to admit defeat. Marcus, now in a relatively safe position, watched the uneven battle in horror. But nature sometimes delivers unexpected lessons. After several long minutes of confrontation, the exhausted elephant leader seemed to lose interest in the strange lion that neither fled nor attacked outright. With a final glance at Zola, he turned away and led the herd in another direction, disappearing deeper into the savannah. Perhaps instinct told him that water and survival were more important than this strange conflict. Zola collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily. His side rose and fell with exhaustion, and fresh wounds and bruises marked his golden coat. Still in shock from what he had just witnessed, Marcus cautiously made his way down, unable to believe that a wild predator had just risked its life for him. His hands were covered in blood from cuts, his knees weak from exertion, but he had to approach his rescuer. The ranger moved closer carefully, expecting the lion to recoil. Wild animals never like showing weakness. But Zola only turned his head, meeting Marcus's gaze. In that moment, Marcus did something he had never dared to do before. He knelt beside the wild predator and for the first time reached out to touch the thick mane. "You saved me, Zola," he whispered, feeling the lion's heart beating beneath his palm, fast from exhaustion but strong. "Now we're even, brother." When the other rangers found them hours later, they couldn't believe their eyes. Marcus was sitting against a rock, and beside him lay the massive lion, allowing the man to tend to his wounds. No one dared to approach, afraid to provoke the predator. But there was no need. Marcus simply stood up and walked toward them, while Zola watched him go without making a move to follow. News of the lion that had saved a ranger spread throughout the park and beyond. Skeptics called it a coincidence, romantics called it gratitude, and zoologists traveled in hopes of studying this unique case of interspecies connection. Tourists began booking safari tours just to catch a glimpse of the famous guardian lion and his human friend. But Marcus knew their bond wasn't for public spectacle or scientific papers. After the elephant incident, Zola became more cautious, appearing less frequently in open spaces. Yet as Marcus patrolled the savannah, he often spotted a familiar silhouette on a hilltop or in the shadow of a baobab. Sometimes the lion followed the off-road vehicle for miles. Other times he simply watched from a distance, as if making sure the man was safe. The deep wounds from the poacher's wire eventually healed, leaving behind only faint scars on Zola's golden fur, silent symbols of the extraordinary friendship that had begun that day. They were permanent reminders of the moment that changed the fate of both man and beast. In times of danger, when poachers or sudden floods threatened the park, Zola always seemed to appear as if by instinct. Once, he led a group of lost school children to the road where rangers found them. Another time, his roar warned Marcus of a hidden leopard ready to pounce. Old Tuma, the only one who had believed Marcus's story from the start, often said, "Sometimes spirits take the form of animals to protect those who guard the land." Marcus didn't believe in spirits, But he couldn't deny it. There was an understanding between him and the wild predator that went beyond the ordinary. In the evenings, as he returned to the base, Marcus often stopped on a hill where the whole savanna stretched before him, bathed in the red and gold hues of the sunset. And almost always at the border between light and shadow, his silent guardian would appear. A reminder that even in the wildest of hearts, there could be a place for loyalty and gratitude. When newcomers asked Marcus if he was afraid to work surrounded by dangerous predators, he only smiled. He had learned something important. Respect and kindness could break barriers that seemed impossible to overcome. And every day as he set out on patrol across the endless Serengeti, he knew that somewhere in the golden sea of grass, his loyal friend Zola was watching over not just him, but the fragile world they had both sworn to protect. And in that unspoken promise between man and lion lay a power capable of changing not just their lives, but the fate of the entire savanna.